Hey guys, welcome back to the For You Time podcast. Today, I will be reacting to my beginning of the year Premier League predictions. Before we jump into this video, I do want to note the Premier League season has been suspended for now, and we are not sure if they will finish these games, so this is why I'm doing this video now. Taking a look at my predictions, it appears I did a pretty poor job of predicting the Premier League this season. Give me a pass, this is my first time. Next year we will do better, but I'm going to display on the side of this video my predictions in a little table showing what I predicted and then the team's actual position that they finished in and then roughly the error of difference. So starting off, our first team that I have is Norwich, and this is the only one that I got correct. They finished in 20th and I predicted that they would finish in 20th. Why did I predict this and why I believe I was right was they spent less than £1 million in the summer transfer window. For me, that was just clear that they weren't going to be able to achieve the success because they weren't able to bring in a quality of player, a Premier League quality of player, and if you don't spend, as unfortunate it is to say, you won't have a team that is good enough to compete in the Premier League, and that's just what it came down to for Norwich. In 19th position, we have Aston Villa, a team that, in my opinion, underperformed based on my prediction. I had them finishing 16th, and I thought it was the amount of money they spent that was going to get them to stay up this season. I should have looked more at Fulham and the amount of money they spent and how they weren't able to stay up. It was a similar situation. I thought, though, that Villa had enough quality with the likes of Jack Grealish, Tyrone Mings to do it, but it looks like that was not the case. Wow, this is a big one. Bournemouth finished 18th this season. I predicted 11th, so that's an error of roughly 7 places, one of my bigger ones on this list. And for me, I thought Bournemouth, we saw them play so well the year prior. We saw the likes of Callum Wilson, Ryan Fraser perform fantastically, and I thought they were going to take it one step up next year, and I thought Eddie Howe was the manager. It looks like there was some kind of fallout between Eddie Howe and the players that I didn't foresee when I was making my prediction video, and unfortunately, it looks like they will be going down if this standing remains the same. And it was just, I don't think Howe is the right manager anymore, but at the beginning of the season, I was not able to see that. So I think that's where it went wrong for me. Next, we have Watford, who finished in 17th. I predicted them to finish 12th, roughly 5 place difference. So I thought Watford is a very good side, and I think actually I was confirmed this when Nigel Pearson came in and started to make a big difference. It didn't quite work out with their manager at the beginning of the season. They had a terribly slow start to the season, but have actually rectified it and are able to stay up. And I think if the rest of the games had gotten played out, I think Watford would have continued to advance in the table. But obviously wouldn't have finished near 12th. I think a lot of this is attributed to a slow start, but I think I just expected a little too much from Watford. Finishing in 16th, this is probably the most embarrassing one in my opinion. We have West Ham United. I had them finishing 9th. Yes, I have a lot of explaining to do. So West Ham, they made major signings in the summer, and I overrated these. Sebastian Haller, I thought would be a striker that would be lethal in the Premier League, and then Fornals, I thought would be a really solid addition. And they both show a lot of promise because they're both younger players, but did they live up to my expectation this season? No, they did not. I've never been a fan of Pellegrini, and I don't know why I put so much faith into him. I thought that with the likes of Declan Rice growing, with some of the additions I said, and then with the manager of Pellegrini's pedigree who won a Premier League title already, I thought they would be able to move up into the top half of the table, and boy was I wrong. I had them finishing above Leicester. Like, what was I thinking, guys? Brighton, they finished in 15th. I predicted them to finish in 18th. I expected them to go down. And my reasoning for this was Chris Hughton left. Well, Graham Potter stepped in and arguably made this Brighton team better because they're a lot more attacking oriented. They play a modern style of football that has really adapted well to the Premier League. And in my opinion, they are totally clear of the relegation territory now, so I missed on that one. I think I underestimated some of their key players and some of the depth this Brighton team had. I think that going forward, they were one of the surprises this season out of the bottom half of the table, one of the better teams attacking-wise. Finishing in 14th is Southampton. I predicted them to finish in 13th, so I got this one pretty close. I'm going to give myself some credit. It came down to Ralph Hasenhüttl. I had some belief in him. I thought he would be a solid manager, and I think Danny Ings. Now, I did not necessarily pick out Danny Ings at the beginning of the season, but I did know that he would play a massive role in the side, and he was able to step up and do so. At the beginning of the season, it did look worrisome. I thought this was going to be a prediction I missed out on massively, but with a resurgence in the second half of the season, Southampton have proved me right and showed they're roughly a mid-table side. Finishing in 13th, Newcastle United. I was quite a bit off on this one. I had them finishing 17th. I believe Steve Bruce proved me wrong. I thought Bruce was going to do an absolutely shocking job at the club. I thought that under a quality of manager like Rafa Benitez, they weren't able to achieve very much. And I thought Bruce was going to come in and just do worse. And he actually did better, which is really surprising, especially considering his top signing, Joe Linton, played terribly this season. I mean, I expected him to have some sort of contribution around 10 goals. I believe Linton had 1 goal in the Premier League, which is just shocking, especially considering the fee of $40 million. St. Maximin, I knew he was going to be good, but wasn't able to contribute as much as we thought due to some injuries and some other fallouts here and there from week to week, inconsistencies. But Steve Bruce, ultimately, I was surprised how well he was able to organize that back line, and he did genuinely impress me. So I think I did underrate some of Steve Bruce's managerial expertise. Finishing in 12th, we had Everton. I had them finishing 8th. I'm really disappointed with this one. I think if the season had played out, I think Everton would have been able to climb into closer to 8th position. But a slow start to the season affected them massively. I think since Ancelotti has come in, they've looked really a lot better. We're seeing the likes of Calvert-Lewin, the likes of Richarlison perform very well. For me, at the end of the day, I think I overestimated Everton's backline. That's been quite poor this season up top. I knew they had some players that are good, like mid-table strikers, but haven't been able to produce enough overall. I think whenever you have an issue with the manager, I think it's hard to say, like, heck, I would have gotten that right either way. I expected it to go better at the beginning of the season. It didn't. They brought in Ancelotti. And the next season, I think they will be closer to 8th, but I'm just going to have to say I got this one wrong. Finishing in 11th, we have Crystal Palace. I had them finishing in 15th, 4 positions off. So I thought Wan-Bissaka's move was going to affect them a lot more. I also thought that Zaha would have moved by now, and considering that they were already one of the lowest scoring teams in the Premier League, a move by Zaha, even in the winter transfer window, would have affected them massively. But nothing came about of it. So since they were able to keep Zaha, and then Roy Hodgson impressed me. I've not been a fan of Roy Hodgson, and he was able to set up a backline at Crystal Palace that was one of the best in the mid-table of the Premier League. Like, they outperformed my expectations, considering I thought Hodgson was a bit of a dead manager, not really up to the current times in the Premier League, and then Zaha, a player who I expected to have kind of fucked off and move on by now. 10th position, we have Burnley. I had them finishing 14th, so definitely underestimated them. I knew Burnley was always going to be a side that stayed up just because of the quality of players they have. The thing I underestimated was manager Sean Dyche and his ability to get all the players on the team to buy into the system, and they really did that. They played a brand of football where they sat in and then they would counterattack, and I thought that wouldn't be as successful as it was, but they did a really good job doing it. Sean Dyche made this team very organized, defensive-minded, and then hit teams hard on the counter. And I think when you're this disciplined for that amount of games, it makes sense why they ended up in 10th position. So I'm going to have to say on this one, it was me underestimating Sean Dyche and the system that the Burnley team was playing. This is a bit of a stinker. In 9th position is Arsenal. I had them finishing in 5th. So when I was making this video, Arsenal made a ton of transfer day deadline deals, namely bringing in Pepe, bringing in David Luiz, and I was initially like, wow, this is going to be the season where Unai Emery can maybe make something happen here. Well, that went all to shit when Emery's team started performing terribly, fallouts with players like Xhaka. It was a mess of a situation, and Emery clearly wasn't the right man. Well, it took a little bit of a transition, and because of that transition, because of that fallout, because of that animosity within the club, we've seen them drop really low in the table. And Arteta was a manager that came in struggled slightly, but got his style of football in there, you could see changes happening in the club, and I think this prediction of having them finish 5th wouldn't have been that far off if the season had played out because they were in some really good form. Now, do I think they would have finished in 5th? No, but do I think they would have been a couple places up in this? Yes. So I'm going to say my Arsenal prediction, yes, I think I overestimated them, but I think I more put too much faith into Unai Emery. I should have kind of seen the writing on the wall since that I think it was pretty clear after they lost in the Europa League final that Emery wasn't the right guy for Arsenal and wasn't really the manager that these players would rally behind. So I think I should have seen a little more of the writing on the wall with that. But overall, I'm pleased. I think another thing I did was I did overrate Nicolas Pepe's impact. I think I got a little too caught up in the price tag and didn't actually look at his age and say, hey, this price tag will be worth it once he develops as a player. But right now, obviously, he's not worth the $72 million. But 2-3 years' time, that is when that $72 million will make sense. And I think I overestimated his impact coming in. I thought Arsenal would have one of the best front threes in the Premier League, and I wouldn't throw them into that category yet. This one is a real shocker. Spurs finished in 8th position. I had them finishing 2nd. Yes, I have a lot of explaining to do. So let me start off by saying I do really rate Mauricio Pochettino as a manager. I think he is one of the best in the game currently. And, well, after that Champions League loss in the final, I thought Spurs went out. Daniel Levy went out and got some players. Ndombele, namely. Lo Celso. I thought these were the moves that were going to make the difference at Spurs. Also, let me say, I didn't think Liverpool, without them making moves in the summer, I didn't think they were going to get better. So I thought this was Spurs' year to jump them. Well, obviously not. Pochettino clearly had fallout with the players following that Champions League loss. No one believed in it anymore, and Pochettino got sacked after a run of bad performances. It was clear players like Dele Alli just didn't want to play for him anymore because after he left, their performances improved. That said, I'm going to have to say I did overrate, I think, some of their signings coming in. I thought Ndombele was going to be a very, very solid player. Like, I thought he was going to be one of the, I'm not going to say best, but like a very highly rated Premier League player. I thought he was going to be making things happen at Spurs, and quite clearly he hasn't. He hasn't been liked by Pochettino or really Mourinho so far because he hasn't really got much playing time, which is very shocking considering in my first video, I was like, oh, this guy's going to be a key component in Spurs' team, and he hasn't been. So I think that's clearly someone Daniel Levy thought was good and didn't actually check him with Pochettino first. Lo Celso, I knew he wasn't going to have a massive impact right away, but we see some of the quality he has. I just don't know if the Spurs team really has the players. I think I put too much faith in them, to be quite honest. Like, I thought Eriksen was probably a little better than he was. I think Kane is still really good, but Dele Alli, I think, is overrated now looking back on it. And I think I was just a little too excited to see Liverpool crumble, and a little excited to see Spurs perform under Pochettino just because I like him so much as a manager. So I'm going to have to say, looking back on the prediction, it was a little biased and a little short-sighted. This one is another stinker. Sheffield United finishing in 7th. I had them finishing in 19th, getting relegated. Well, I know I have some explanation, but let me just say first, people who are getting paid to do this, make predictions, pundits who are getting paid large sums of money, did not predict Sheffield United to stay up this season. So, I'm going to have to say that I was one of these people. I didn't look enough into the Sheffield side. I knew I'd done some research on them, seen some of their performance in the championship, but let me be quite frank. I didn't believe in Chris Wilder. I didn't believe in the players, and that was a mistake. Similarly to Sean Dyche and Burnley, Chris Wilder has a system. And what did those players do? They bought into this system, and they have been fantastic because of it. They've gotten big results home and away. Part of it is they've traveled so well, and that's as a club like Sheffield coming up to the Premier League this season, you don't expect that, and that just shows the discipline they have. I think I massively underrated Chris Wilder. I have to say that. I didn't give him any sort of credit coming into the season, and I think that was a major mistake. Also, I'm going to say now, I don't expect them to repeat this form next season. I think this is a feel-good situation. I think they've done a fantastic job. Put me to shame, but I could see this as a one-season type wonder thing. Coming in 6th position is Wolves. And I have to say I did pretty well with this one. I had them finishing 7th. I knew under Nuno, with some of the quality players they have, they would be great. I didn't see Traore having this type of season, but wow, how good was he this year? I mean, they had some really good players. Raul Jimenez, he's fantastic. And my only question was, could they do it both in Europe and in the Premier League? Would that distract them? And like I thought, for the most part, no, it didn't. They were on that level where they could perform both in Europe and in the Premier League, and we saw some hiccups here and there, but I don't think they were on the level to compete with the biggest clubs in the Premier League. But I think they were definitely in that conversation for that 5th, 6th, 7th spot for years to come. So I think this Wolves team, unless it totally gets blown apart in the summer or something like that, is a team that will be in the top half, not just in the top half, but competing to play in Europe for years to come, just because the manager they have, the quality of players they have, it just all seems to make sense and fits. So I'm gonna have to big myself up on that one. But majority of people were predicting Wolves to do well this year just based on the continuity they had in their team and some of the moves they had made in the summer. Finishing in 5th position, we have Manchester United. That's my club. I had them finishing 4th, one higher. And they very well could have if the season had been played out, let me add. But, so, a couple things. Solskjaer, in the season, he was so inconsistent. Something to what I expected. Then, we had the likes of Paul Pogba leaving the side for an extended period of time due to an injury. I guess we'll call it that. Harry Maguire, I thought, performed excellently. That's what I predicted. Dan James, I didn't see that kind of impact coming in, but did a really good job. And, I mean, this prediction could have been thrown off a bit, but then they went out and did something that I knew and I had been vocal about before needed improvement, and that was their midfield. And who did they bring in? Bruno Fernandes, and he changed life at Manchester United. I genuinely believe if the season had played out, United would have finished in 4th. Unfortunately, due to circumstances that we all know of, the season was not able to play out, and, well, United finished in 5th, but I think I was fairly accurate on this one. I knew they weren't going to be able to compete for the title or even a 3rd position just because of the inconsistencies, and I think I wasn't too far off on this one. Chelsea, so they finished in 4th position. I had them finishing in 6th. I thought Lampard was going to struggle, and we haven't seen him struggle. We have seen inconsistency, though, but I didn't think the young players were necessarily cut up to the task. I knew they were all going to be very good, but what comes with youth? Inconsistency. However, Tammy Abraham impressed me and surprised me. I didn't think at this young age he would be so calculated and so good. Christian Pulisic actually underestimated, in my opinion, for what my expectations were, and considering what he had already achieved in the Bundesliga. But I'm gonna have to say, I think what I did undervalue about Chelsea was the youth. I think what I did overestimate was some of their experienced players, the likes of Kurt Zouma. I never thought he was a great player, but man, was he shocking this year. I think I also underestimated Lampard's ability. I didn't expect him with little experience, with a season at Derby that, in my opinion, the media over-highlighted. I think they highlighted as good when it was okay. It was fantastic, but it was an okay season. A season with Derby that was overestimated. I was surprised how well he came in and performed at Chelsea. I think you could see at the beginning he was struggling with some of the rotations and stuff like that. But overall, I think did a really good job getting the best out of his young players for their age. And I think this year is a really positive note for Lampard and both Chelsea fans and something they can build off of. So I have to say I did underestimate a lot of Frank Lampard's ability and younger players like Tammy Abraham to perform at the biggest level. Moving into 3rd, we have Leicester City. And this is a shocker. This is one of my more embarrassing ones. I had them finishing 10th. Yes, I know, that is bad. So let me just say, I thought some of the transfers that happened this summer would have affected them more, namely Maguire. In my opinion, I think Maguire is a top 3 center back in the Premier League behind Laporte and Van Dijk. So I thought his movement from the club would affect them massively. I also thought, I didn't really rate Brendan Rodgers like that. I'm going to be honest with you. I thought Rodgers was a good manager, but I never put him on the level where he could move a club like Leicester forward that much. I think part of it was my perception based on the end of his time at Liverpool as opposed to what he had done throughout that Liverpool run. So I have to say I massively underrated Brendan Rodgers, and I also massively underrated their ability to find a replacement for Maguire. And for that, I think that's why I got this one so far off. Looking back on it, I probably should have put them near 6th or 7th, but because of my stupidity, I put them down in 10th, and now I'm looking like an idiot because they absolutely outperformed my expectations. Manchester City, I had them finishing first this year, and they finished in second. So, Manchester City, a team that went out and got players like Rodri this summer. I expected them, with the depth they added to their side continually, that they would be head and shoulders above Liverpool. I thought that City was more deep, had better quality of players. I thought Pep's system fit the modern game better, and I thought, just from what I watched in the All or Nothing documentary, which sounds a bit cheesy, that I thought he would be able to motivate these players for a third title win. But was I wrong? Yes, definitely. I think the main places where I went wrong with my prediction was, one, expecting City players to be so up to a third title win. It's so hard, as we've seen just from football, but also other sports as well, winning so many titles consecutively. It is because it is a mental blockage that eventually happens where you become complacent. And did City become complacent at times? Yes. Also, I think something I also overlooked, I said depth, but there was one position where they didn't have depth, and that was center back, unfortunately. Because once Laporte went down, I mean, they struggled massively defensively, and I think that's where it all came to crumble for City, in my opinion. So, although they did add depth to their midfield, they did add depth in other positions, they didn't have the depth they needed in the most important position, and that is center back. You see Otamendi move in there. That was not great. He's not really a solid player. Then you also see the likes of John Stones, who's been so poor as of recent. I don't know why, but his form's been terrible. So City, if they do want to compete with Liverpool next year, gonna have to go find another center back to pair with Laporte, and they're going to need to move on from Stones and Otamendi. Fernandinho got played out of position. I think that led to some of his demise. So, for me, it came to defensive woes, injuries, and them just not being able to motivate for a third consecutive season. And our Premier League champions, as of now, I know they haven't officially won it or have been announced champions, because who knows, the season may get somehow played out in the summer. Very unlikely, let me add. But it is Liverpool. They finished in first position. I predicted them third. Now, this one I have a lot of explaining to do, and I have to say not all my explaining will make up for my prediction because it is absolutely shocking. So, Liverpool team that I put in third, and I think it would have been a little more alright if I put them in second and said they would have lost to City, but putting them below Spurs is shocking. I thought, so here's my rationale. Liverpool's only major real move in the summer was bringing in Harvey Elliott. Yes, I know. That sounds a bit ridiculous for one of the best football clubs in the world. So, because of that, I thought, well, if they're not going to bring in new players, I thought they performed at the best they possibly could last year after winning that Champions League. I thought that was the best Liverpool we will ever see under Jurgen Klopp. I didn't think there was any more to get out of those players. I thought they all performed at their peak. I didn't expect Jordan Henderson to go from here to here this season. Those are just things I did not expect to happen. I didn't expect Joe Gomez to go from here to here. They all took a step up. Trent Alexander-Arnold to go from here to here. Every single player took a step up this year in their play, other than maybe Van Dijk, who is already on the Ballon d'Or-esque level that he was on. So I have to say, I underestimated the players' ceiling. I thought they were already at their ceiling, and that was a major mistake, in my opinion. Also, I underestimated Jurgen Klopp massively. I thought he's always been a very good manager, but I've never thought that he was quite on the level of Guardiola just tactically. But what I did underestimate is his ability to motivate players, and the way he was able to get the best out of his players, take players who are already world class, and then move them up here, like I said, was sensational. It's the way he has with words, the way he motivates, the way the atmosphere that he creates is sensational and something that I don't think is matched in football. Also, the way he's able to rally the fan base around the players and integrate the intersection between the player, the fans, and Klopp is fantastic. And I think that environment he's created at Liverpool allows players to grow even when they are at such a high level. So in my opinion, I just underestimated both the player's ability to grow and also the manager's ability to grow. That said, I do think at some point as players start to age, if Liverpool aren't smart about bringing in a new wave, I think they could struggle, but this was clearly not the season, as many of the players were still in the middle of their prime, and I think that's something I should have realized. If they were all starting to hit their 30s, I think that could be more questionable. But considering a lot of them are in 27, 28 range, or if not younger, I think I should have realized, hey, like, these players are all still going to improve if they had the right management, and obviously they did. So that's my explanation for Liverpool. Liverpool fans, I am sorry. You can go roast me down in the comments for not putting them first at the beginning of this year. I definitely learned my lesson. So what I did was I took the difference between my prediction and the actual finish of each club, added it all together to calculate my error. So my error was 78 places, right? Which is not very good. I got this video from Spencer FC, and looking back to his first season doing this, he got 70. So I'm kind of on par with what he got. I have to say there were some like quite outstanding placements this year in terms of like teams massively underperforming or massively overachieving. And like, for example, like Leicester, I think overachieved. Sheffield massively overachieved. And then a team like maybe like Bournemouth massively underachieved, just based on what like professional pundits were saying. That said, I did have some shocking ones like West Ham I put way too high. What was I thinking there? So 78 is my difference. You can compare that to other football YouTubers who do this video and put me on based on there. You know, I'm still the GOAT in terms of videos, but in terms of predictions, maybe not. We'll have to see. But yeah, so I think in the future I just need to be a little more insightful, not get so caught up into the transfers, but I think a lot of it is going to be looking at the managers, and I think I also could have done a better job with a little more research of teams coming up from the championship. I think I'm not as being an American, I'm not going to lie, we don't get championship coverage here, so being a little more tuned in on what's going on in the championship would have benefited me massively. But yeah, I think I have only room to grow in this, and I really did enjoy doing these predictions, and now looking back on them, like roughly 7-8 months later, I think it's really cool to do. So thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to hit that like button. Let me know in the comments what you thought about my predictions and my reactions and my explanations for what I think went right or wrong in terms of my predictions. And also, go tag your favorite YouTubers in this video and let them know, hey, like, where did you finish in terms of your predictions? So, thank you guys for watching. Take it easy. Peace.